Hello and welcome to the Small Agency Show. I'm your host, Chip Griffin, the founder of Saga, the Small Agency Growth Alliance. And today we're going to be talking about agencies in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. So let's get into the show. So today I'm very pleased to have with me a couple of good friends, Jill Manty from Manty Web. Welcome, Jill.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thanks. And Matt Cookson from Cookson Communications. Great to have you here as well.
Great. Thanks for having me on, Chip. Appreciate it.
Well, so these are two agency owners who have been through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, and I know from my conversations with agency owners that there are a lot of people who have heard about it. They're kind of curious about it. They'd perhaps be interested in learning more. And so when I found out that both of my friends had been through this program, I thought it would be a great topic for a show. So that's what we'll be talking about today. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask of Jill or Matt or myself, feel free to use the chats or comments on whatever site you are watching this broadcast on. If you're watching it as a recording, you can always email me at chip@smallagencygrowth.com, and I'd be happy to try to answer your questions there. But without further ado, Jill, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and where folks can find you?
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm Jill Manty. I own Manty Web. We are a technical digital marketing agency. We do web development, SEO, PPC, and you can reach me at jill@mantyweb.com or at mantyweb.com.
Great. Thanks, Jill. And Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Cookson. I'm CEO of Cookson Communications. We're celebrating our 11th year in business, and we are a multi-service communications company. We provide public relations, marketing, digital design, rebranding, web, and social media work, usually in a uniform package. And you can reach me at matt@cooksonscommunications.com.
Great. Well, thank you for both for being here today. And so why don't we start with how you each got involved with the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program and when you initially went through it. And I guess, Jill, we'll start with you.
Okay. I first heard about the program in probably 2016. I was serving on the program committee for American Businesswomen's Association, and we had a speaker who came from Lift Fund, which is a community bank, and he happened to mention in passing this Goldman Sachs program because Lift Fund is very involved with the program. And I thought, well, that sounds really interesting. And I went and looked, and the deadline had already passed, and I really didn't think anything about it. And then somehow through the magic of digital marketing, I ended up on their mailing list. And so about a year later, they sent me an email and I applied. There is an application process where you go through an application and then you go through an interview. And so I applied in 2016, end of 2016, was accepted and went through the program in the spring of 2017.
Excellent. And Matt, why don't you share your experience, and also why don't you take the task of describing briefly what the program is, because I guess we haven't done that yet, and that would make sense to do as well.
Sure. I'll start with the latter and go back to the former. So the program is obviously, as its name is, it's for small businesses. The goal of this effort was to attract 10,000 small businesses. It is funded by the Goldman Sachs Foundation. There is no cost to participate, but like Jill said, there's an application process that one goes through, and they're looking for people that have run a business for at least a year or so, have a couple employees besides themselves, and are just interested in exploring more about how to professionally operate, grow a business, work in a network, and take advantages of some resources. So we're basically put through about a 10 to 12 week curriculum, and I call it a mini MBA for the most part. And it's a fast-paced program. Pre-COVID, it was still partly online with some sessions designed to really build your cohort and the folks you're working with. So mine was 37 people, so it's one of the larger ones. And we were taken through an overnight. We did an orientation, a couple days together, and then we would go methodically through a specific curriculum, but very hands-on, lots of examples. And the goal is essentially that the participants are going to build out essentially their own growth strategy. And then you work on your growth strategy, you work in smaller groups to refine that growth strategy, you work with the experts and these business advisors that you're paired with. And at the end of the program, you present your growth strategy. And it's quite a process. It's a lot of time, but it's an investment of time. And how I found out about the program, so my pathway was kind of unique in some ways because one of our clients is the community college system of New Hampshire, and a lot of community college systems are the ones that help implement the program. And so they reached out and said, you should check this out. We might need some marketing help on it. So I went to the rollout of the program with U.S. Senator Jean Shaheen. She's the chair of the Small Business Committee in the Senate, and she helped introduce the program, and I learned more about it through that. And I said, well, I might want to do this program instead of market this program. So it was a unique way. So I became cohort 1, and one of our people in our folks gave us all mugs.
Excellent. And Jill, Matt said this is a big time commitment, but why don't you talk through a little bit? What if someone's thinking about applying for this program? I mean, what should they expect as far as the time commitment, both for the program and my understanding is there are follow-up activities as well.
Right. So the actual program is about 100 hours. And our program apparently was a little different than Matt's, and I know it's constantly evolving, and obviously it's evolved a lot with COVID, and it's gone to 100% digital, and online. But in addition to the 100 hours when you're actually sitting in a classroom, that growth plan is a significant time commitment. I mean, there's homework and there are things that you need to do. So our program was typically alternating weeks. 1 week would be 1 class a week, and then 1 week it would be 2 shorter classes a week or something along those lines. And it varied from week to week. But one of the things that it was really great for was we at least 2 to 3 Fridays a month were completely out of the office. And you're not supposed to be working, and you're not supposed to be on your phone, and you're supposed to have an office that can run without you being in the office. And that was really one of the harder things for a lot of people, is that being away from the office for a full day. And so for some people, they couldn't do it. Like that, we did have a few people in our group that weren't able to finish the program, and they just couldn't manage being away from their business for that amount of time. And then afterwards, it's really more voluntary. Afterwards, it's really a question of there are local programs and national programs, and they've been doing a lot of webinars recently. We do a Capitol Hill Day. During COVID, we've done 3 Capitol Hill Days virtually, where we're meeting with our senators and meeting with our representatives. And they've really been great about taking in the information about not just like, well, this is what we think you need, but what do you actually need? And you mentioned the PPP, earlier when we were talking, and it's been a good resource for PPP. In fact, with the second round of PPP, the Goldman Sachs alumni actually have direct access to a Goldman Sachs program for getting their PPP funding. So there definitely have been things before all of this, way back in 2018, they did the Washington Capitol Hill thing was live. So we had a 1-day conference where Richard Branson spoke, and Michael Bloomberg spoke, and Tyler Perry spoke, and Sarah Blakely spoke, and it was like 1 day of every 45 minutes, it was some other bigger name speaking, and then the next day we had live meetings with our senators and our congressmen. So, it's Goldman Sachs using us as a commercial, which is fine because it's a very good symbiotic relationship.
Sure. And obviously, a lot of the businesses that are participating are not PR and marketing agencies. So, Matt, how did you find that experience of both the curriculum? How applicable was it to agencies versus other small businesses, and how was it, interacting with those other business owners, and were you able to get some perhaps unique perspectives from other industries?
Right. So our state of New Hampshire is population-wise smaller than the city of Houston. So New Hampshire is a unique place, and you tend to know everyone if you're here for a while. And it's really, you can call it 2 degrees of separation in New Hampshire. And what I found, and usually I know half the people in these networking events and things that we go to, we do a lot of that. And I went in here, and with 37 folks, I knew one person, and I thought that was great. So we had a pretzel maker, we had a beer brewer. We had a wedding venue planner, IT companies. We had a guy who owned a tire sales company. Really diverse group of people. I was the only one. Some were service, some were product. I was the only one on the agency side. And while you think, what do you all have in common? Well, we're all trying to run small business. And we're all trying to figure out accounts receivable, accounts payable, develop sales funnels. And the Goldman program put the science behind a lot of that. I mean, I'm an English major, English and journalism. I didn't take any business classes. If I wanted to find out something about business, I'd Google it. So what the program does is it really forced us to refine it, refine our plan, refine our strategy. And Jill alluded to it too. By being there, we had to leave the office, and we had to leave it up to other people. And that could be downright scary for some. But when you're in the office, if you're thinking strategy, especially for what Jill and I do, we're thinking strategy for other people, not us. And this program, the phrase that came out of this in our group was, you have to get out of your business to get into it. And by removing yourself and spending, and that's why I use the term investing when I made my opening comments, you really are investing that time. And I use my plan. I've refined it. I refined it last year, and I've rolled it out to my staff, and when we use it. So we have a usable tool as well as a great network and a little more acumen coming out of the program.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one thing that you have both now said that I think is so valuable is that you had to get yourself out of the day-to-day of your business to go through the program, and how that can be a real challenge and scary at times. And I think that that's something that agency owners need to do regardless of whether they are taking part in this program or not, right? So the forcing action of this external program, really helps you to do the things that, to be able to effectively scale and grow your business, you're going to need to do anyway. Jill, what are some of the other lessons that you took away from the program?
Well, it was, I'm like Matt, I have a theater degree and I run a web development company. And so I don't have a business degree. I don't have a technology degree. And I went into the program feeling a little bit like a fraud as far as a business owner, because I don't know anything about running a business, even though we'd been doing it for 8 years at that point in time. I still felt like I must not be doing this right because I'm not trained in doing this. So one of the things that I learned and walked away with was I knew a lot about running our business. And yes, there were things to learn. And yes, I learned to read a balance sheet, and I learned to read our financial documents, and I learned to look at some things that I'd never really looked at. But I also got a lot of confidence from realizing how much I already did know. And that was super valuable to me. I also learned, and one of the things that we immediately implemented, I learned that revenue does not equal profit, and that revenue does not equal expense.
Sorry, I just had to cheer that one because I have that conversation just about every day with an agency owner.
And so we, within 6 months after leaving the program, parted ways with our largest client, whom we had allowed to become 75% of our business. And so for the first year and a half, I'd go to Goldman Sachs alumni things. They'd be like, "How's your business going since the program?" And I was like, "Well, since I pretty much burned it down after the program and started over, not great." But it really was because we looked at the numbers and we realized that we were on a trajectory. We could crash land the plane, or we could let the plane crash, but the plane was crashing. And that was not evident. If you looked at our bank statements, that was not evident. If you looked at the amount of money that was coming in every month, it was just not evident until we had to sit down and really look at how much money are we making. And we talked with a lot of investment bankers in the program, and they would look at our books and they would look at our information and they'd be like, this is not a healthy company that we would invest in our loan to.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Goldman Sachs isn't using in their marketing materials, join our program and burn your business to the ground. But
no, I'm not but I mean,
but it's an important thing, right? Because what it helped you do is it helps you recognize the unhealthiness of that client relationship and how you had to correct that to endure some short-term pain in order to build a stronger, healthier business for the long term.
Absolutely. I mean, plus then Harvey happened right after that, and then we've gone through COVID, and I have no doubt that if it had not been for this program, that we wouldn't be in business. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have had the skills.
Right. Now, Matt, Jill has talked about some of the alumni activities and national programs and things like that. But talk to me a little bit about the connections that you made there, and that you're still taking advantage of, even a few years after you went through the main part of the program.
Well, someone said it in our group pretty early on when we were introducing ourselves, and later in the program, someone said, out of all the services here, probably every one of our businesses could use services that my company offered, which was kind of an amazing sentiment. And one thing that Goldman will say publicly is that the businesses typically grow, 10% or more. They grow their staff within 6 months after doing the program. And they tend to do business with some of the classmates in your group. So let me tell you the story. It's a quick story, but we had one person, similar, sort of a slightly more of a blow-up model than what Jill was talking about a little bit. But this woman ran a very successful cleaning business, and she enrolled in the program, and she basically wanted to use the program to learn how to wind down the business appropriately. And after studying it and looking at the financial modeling, et cetera, she said, "Whoa, this is pretty successful." And she briefed her daughter on all of this, and her daughter ended up taking over the business, which I thought was super cool. And then, fast forward 6 months, and the daughter reaches out to me, and we have a great discussion about, what she needs to include in her website or SEO, how to market locally, all that. Just a freebie session. But a great local connection, and just great to see that the business lived on through the daughter. But we ended up working with about 5 of the companies, and one of them, she bifurcated her business through this. She had 2 successful pieces, but she wanted to do one part, so she ended up she learned enough knowledge to actually be able to parse the business and have the employees take one piece, and she took one piece, and we're going to end up working with her to grow her piece. So some great connections and just great sounding boards, because these people, they know your business model intimately. You've talked about it for 10 weeks. Everyone's very confidential. They treat it appropriately because no one's competitive in the group for the most part. So suddenly you have an informal advisory board of 36.
Right.
Maybe it won't stay 36, but there are handfuls of our group that get together regularly. Your email chains to discuss issues like, as Jill said, PPP and IDLE were big ones, and it's a fantastic network. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's so much to be learned from other businesses, other kinds of businesses. And, frankly, serendipity is something that a lot of us are missing out on these days because, instead of reading a newspaper where you stumble across a story that you might never have seen otherwise, we're reading filtered news feeds or going to very niche media sites or watching very niche TV channels and those kinds of things. And so that certainly helps us to get very deep into the things that we're interested in, but it takes away some of the learning that you can get from completely unrelated fields. And so, the fact that you are bringing together all of these different kinds of businesses in the program, I'm sure provides you some valuable insight. The other thing that has struck me is, both of you have said, you've got an English degree, a theater degree, and that's very common in the PR and marketing agency space, right? Where most folks do not come in with a business background. Many agency owners didn't even intend to build a business. They're sort of accidental agency owners because they maybe started as a freelancer between jobs and, oh, look, it turned into something. So finding ways to get business knowledge can be very helpful. And so it sounds like this program is, a real good way to jumpstart that if you recognize the need and you're willing to make the commitment.
Yes. One of the things that I realized was it's not agency owners only. A lot of business owners are accidental business owners.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. In fact, in our group, we had 3 accountants who were not accountants. Like, that's not what they were doing for a career, but was their background and their training. And it was very interesting because regardless of what their businesses were, they definitely were in better shape than most of us. Like, one of them has a photography business, and he already was running his photography business. Like, he could tell you exactly what his financials looked like. Whereas some other people that you might think, they were running tech companies, and you might think, well, that maybe has a better better business background, did not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that's not limited to agency owners, that a lot of business owners start doing what they enjoy. And all of a sudden they find that they're running a business and they just have no idea how to handle employees, and they have no idea how to handle their financials, and they have no idea how to, market their business. And it's been really interesting to see that common thread of where people struggle. And some people will go get an MBA, but as Matt alluded to, this is like a mini MBA, but it's geared towards your business.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not learning to read random financial documents. You're reading your financial documents.
Right.
So then you don't have to take that information and then apply it because you've already applied it. You're not learning about random marketing, techniques. You're learning about, like, well, what would I do with my business for marketing? Right. So it was really helpful from that perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not theoretical like it would be in school, or
right.
you pick a random case. You're really digging into your own stuff, which I think can be, for a lot of folks, that helps make it so much more relevant. There are a lot of folks who I think are intimidated by financial reporting and those kinds of things. But when it's your own business, it's so much more easy to relate to what you're looking at.
Well, I found too, because of what you said, Chip. So you're not in an MBA program, you're not getting graded, and you come across a component that, oh, this is really for a product-based company. I'm not going to do that worksheet. You're not going to get dinged for it or anything like that. And I remember in the finance part on how you track your nets and grosses, and they have their spreadsheets and their formulas. I have a historical Excel spread linked like crazy. It goes back to 2013. It's an amazing tool. And I showed it to them, and they're like, oh, just keep using that.
Right.
So, there is a little bit of that, that was an accidental spreadsheet. It wasn't by their formula, but it works for my formula, and it's fine. So, that is the beauty about being an adult taking a program like this is you're not being graded. You can pick and choose. You can deep dive where you can. And like Jill said, we're using our data in real time. So very, very helpful.
Right.
And you have the ability to say in a class to say, hey, you're saying this, but I don't think that applies to me. And sometimes they would say, you're right, it doesn't. And sometimes they would say, have you thought about? And then you go, it doesn't apply to me. Just kidding, it really does apply.
Right. So the sessions on inventory management, you say you probably didn't pay as much attention to. Is that
probably?
Yeah. If you're an agency and you've got inventory, something's wrong. So you're running a strange agency. Anyway, no. If you were talking to an agency owner who is considering applying for the program, what advice would you have for them? What tips would you have?
I mean, I definitely say do it. But I would say make sure you have the time make sure that you have the conversation ahead of time with your employees and any business partners. Make sure that you have the ongoing conversation with your employees and your business owners. The most successful people in my group were the people who came, like I said, most of our classes were on Friday, were the people who had a standing Monday meeting with their employees to talk about what they'd learned, what they thought they might be implementing. Because I was constantly during that time saying, okay, now we're going to be doing, I need this information from you that I've never asked for before, or I need you to give me this. And just having those conversations so that they understood what was happening, because it definitely, as you're making those changes, it can make your employees very nervous if you're not having that communication. I am hard pressed to think of any business owners who went through the program who did not make relatively large changes to some aspect of their business. So just if you're open, if you've made up your mind and you feel like it's going well and you don't have any interest in learning, don't do the program. If you feel like there's room for improvement, it's a great opportunity to get that improvement.
And I'd add to that too. So these are running cohorts. So 10 to 12 weeks. And Jill was telling us earlier that Houston has 3 going on. They're concurrent. Here they're back to back. But if the timing's not right for your business, if you're like Jill said, well, things are going fine right now, or then maybe you don't want to do it now. But if you see like you've got a challenge coming, something's shifting, tides are shifting. For me, we were running a nonprofit fully integrated into our company, and I was doubling up as its executive director. And we knew in 6 months after I started the program that after 10 years of doing that, we grew it enough, and we were going to, send off the proverbial ship and with staff. So I knew that was coming, but I was doing that piece at a totally different rate. So my core business model was going to change, and I was going to lose a piece of business, like Jill said, more like 25%, but I was going to gain back 45% of staff time. So I really wanted to model that in this class when I had those resources. So for me, it was absolutely the perfect time to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the good news is very few agencies are going through any change right now. It's a very quiet, passive time frame for agencies and really every other kind of business, because
right.
The 2020s are perfectly normal, right?
Yeah, right. Here's an aside thing if you're an agency. If there's not a lot of agency people in there, there's not a lot of writers in there. I did a blog on it, and I got our business review to run it. So I blogged after every 2 classes, and they ran a series of 6 blogs for me, and it gave them documentation, and the program actually uses those blogs to provide an overview of the program. So for those agency people, step up. So I'm the one they wheel out when they want to do panels on this statewide and recruiting efforts. I'm one of a few. So as communicators, it's a natural role if you believe in the program, and it's a way to get yourself out there. And as we know in this day and age, you want to take every opportunity to get yourself out there, because they're a little trickier right now.
Right, and what I'm hearing from both of you is that the program itself provides so much value, but then like any good educational program, it's the connections, the alumni, and frankly, what you choose to get out of it by investing additional time after the fact, by networking, by writing about it, by taking advantage of all of those opportunities that really adds a lot of increased value, and it goes well beyond those 12 weeks.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we've taken different paths with that, which is interesting to hear, because Matt's clearly become more involved on his state level, and I've become more involved with the national alumni. And so we had a webinar 2 weeks ago that was about how to do business with Goldman Sachs, and they have preferential treatment for people that have gone through the program to do work not just with Goldman Sachs, but with Goldman Sachs's connections, and they'll serve to make introductions. So there really are some great opportunities for business development in addition to and long after the actual information about the program. But also, we had a point when things were bad where we looked at selling the business, and that was something that you go through in the program. So I knew how to evaluate what we should be looking for, and whether it was a good opportunity to sell. And you do so look at things from the perspective of that opportunity. So I definitely think it's, especially if you're looking at anything that might be a change in your business, or if you're thinking I might want to sell, or you're thinking I might want to retire, it's just a good opportunity to go through and figure out in a lab type setting what that might look like.
And even in our session, after we were done, you do a post evaluation, and some of our folks really wanted to go deeper on the valuation pieces and the selling or preparing to maybe merge your business. And so they came back 6 months later and planned out a half-day session for cohorts 1 and 2 and invited people in on that subject matter. So totally free, open to anyone, but they were listening, and that was an area where people really did want to take that deeper dive. And, those kind of topics are important for small businesses, but as you know, Chip, that those issues are very front of mind to a lot of agency owners.
Absolutely. Well, Jill and Matt, I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk about your experiences in the 10,000 Small Businesses program. As I said at the start, I know a lot of agency owners have heard about it and have said, geez, maybe I should think about it. And I think you've given folks a lot to chew on here to better understand how it might apply to their own business and whether or not it's something that they ought to pursue. So I really appreciate you both taking the time to be here today.
Thanks for having us.
So, opportunity. Thanks.
So with that will bring to an end today's show. If you want to see replays of this or any other live stream or see some recorded videos, you can go to smallagency.tv. And of course, we have the Saga community that I would love to have you join. It's free to do so. Just go to smallagencygrowth.com/join. There's a resource library. We have plenty of meetups with other folks who have other opportunities to engage with Jill and Matt because they're both regulars in those meetups. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch today. I appreciate Jill and Matt for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all back here on another show very soon.